Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, we knew that Rings of Power Season 2, the absolute abomination and disrespect to J.R.R. Tolkien's great work of The Lord of the Rings, was going to be hot garbage. It was going to be just as bad, if not worse, than Season 1. And ladies and gentlemen, if the critics can be believed, it looks like it is actually going to be even worse than Season 1. Yes, Season 1, this absolute disrespect and completely and totally deranged, making no sense storytelling, bad graphics, bad costuming, and all around just a poor quality fantasy show, let alone any kind of accurate representation of J.R.R. Tolkien's great Lord of the Rings work in any way, shape, or form, lost over 90% of its audience, boys and girls, from beginning to end. And it doesn't look like Season 2 is going to be any better because the embargo on all of these wonderful series and all of these wonderful access media folks out there is officially up. And it always does make you wonder when they hold the embargo right up until the very last minute. And it looks like we now know why. Because IGN, ladies and gentlemen, IGN of all place is giving Season 2 a 6 on the review, and trust me, this is only one of many. I have got a nice little collection here of all of the headlines and all of the reviews that we've got, as well as the truth behind the Rotten Tomatoes score that, of course, our dear sweet Screen Rant over here tries to brag about. But as usual, when you dig into things a little bit deeper, you find out the truth, ladies and gentlemen. And that's exactly what we're going to get in here today, because it looks like Rings of Power Season 2 is so abysmally bad, boring, and makes no sense that even the access media critics have to finally be honest about what is really going on inside of this absolute abomination. So we're going to check out all of these wonderful articles. We're going to get through all of the headlines. We're going to show you the truth behind what the critic score actually is over there on Rotten Tomatoes and why you can't trust the all critic score. But before we do, if you do enjoy our content, hit that like button, share with all your friends, and subscribe or follow if you have not already, because boys and girls, we are inching our way closer to 1,300, and I could not do that without every single one of you. Also, leave us a comment in the section down below. Let us know whether you're excited for Rings of Power Season 2, or if you're just excited out there to laugh at all of the people out there that review this show so sillily for you, and laugh, ridicule, and make fun, and watch them laugh, ridicule, and make fun of this, or are you one of the literal less than 1% of the actual Tolkien fans out there who are willing to give this show a shot? Let us know in the comment section down below. After all opinions are welcome. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's just go ahead and start off with the IGN one right here. We don't even have to go to their full report, because they sum it up very nicely here. The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, Season 2 review. The Lord of the Rings of Power second season does a great job portraying Sauron's machinations and his impact on those he manipulates. But too much time is spent on disconnected subplots, delivering only mediocre intrigue and thin characters. Moments of powerful pathos and dramatic action the season does deliver are bogged down by places and people who will only become more important later. Let me translate that for you. For all the nonsense that J.D. Payne and McKay said about making this all action, it was going to be great, it was going to be super packed, da 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 da. No, you only get a little bit of action here and there, but the rest of it is so dry, bland, and boring that the action doesn't want you to stop from pulling your hair out and trying to stab your own eyeballs out. Don't do that. It's not good for you. But seriously, just don't watch the show if you feel like it's going to be on that way. But honestly, wrap duct tape around your head, because your head is probably going to explode. So this is just IGN. Now, of course, out here, Screen Rant tries to put out this wonderful little review. Says the season 2 is at 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. But read their review, right? They try to brag about this 80%. By the way, mind you, less than what season 1 was, just to go over and reiterate that a little bit. Season 1 here, you've got it down here, 83% certified. We're already at season 2 of an 82% already. But oh, trust me, it gets so much worse, because when you actually break it down to the top critics, Yes, whose bills aren't exclusively paid by Amazon, you get a 69%, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, giggity. The all critics, of course, is still an 82%, which is still down for less than last year's season. Now, why is it such a huge difference between all critics and top critics? In case you don't know, all critics is anyone out there who has ever written a review on anything from television or movies even once, whether it be on a blog, whether they made a YouTube or a Rumble video or reviewed something out there on X/Twitter. Anyone out there, if you've done at least one of those things, and then you meet certain little requirements, some of those a little on the diversity side, over there at Rotten Tomatoes, you too can be considered a Rotten Tomatoes critic. Now, what's the difference between them and top critics? Top critics all work for places like The Hollywood Reporter, Variety, IGN, or The Wrap. All places that actually, for some magical reason, actually decided their integrity, at least to a certain degree, was worth something. Because over the last year and a half or so, we have seen a drastic change. They do not just simp for any of this stuff out there anymore. They are willing to at least be honest to a certain degree while trying to pad it with all of these wonderful, nice things. And the funny part about this, well, common nerd, what did the top critics say about season 1? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we don't know, because apparently it was so bad, or maybe Amazon's check actually cleared, that season 1 doesn't even have a top critic score for us to check, ladies and gentlemen. All they have is that wonderful certified fresh rating. Well, what do you want to bet that 79 rotten ratings it's got has a lot to do with the top critics that are also roasting this? But how? Why are they giving it such a bad score? What has turned the tide when it comes to the Hollywood critics? Well, let's let them speak for themselves. We can go over their Twitter stuff, but all of this is a lot of fun as well. Hollywood Reporter says, The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power review. Season 2 of Amazon's fantasy prequel is too epic for its own good. That's the best they could put for that one. And it only gets worse as you go up a little bit here. Even the people from Screen Rant themselves here, the ones who were promoting and showing off this wonderful score, even they had to say, to recapture the magic of Tolkien's work, which The Rings of Power has proven to entirely capable of doing. No, it hasn't. That's an absolute lie, unless you're completely and totally delusional and live in a world outside of reality where this show didn't lose 90% of its audience from episode 1 to the last one, okay? But we'll give Screen Rant that. They're simps, right? They're acolytes for this age. We know they push this kind of stuff. It must be fearless. It must feel fearless. Right now, it's as though it's more afraid of what it might do rather than what it's doing. Oh, yes, they didn't change it enough for you. Variety. The Rings of Power makes Lord of the Rings a boring slog in a lifeless season 2. Wow. Sitting down to write this review of The Rings of Power Season 1, I could think of a few memorable moments. A swarm of butterflies coalesces into a humanoid figure. A choir sings of communions with the earth in gorgeous harmony. A horde of spiders does it as well. What can I not think of are any characters I particularly care about, or any emotions I felt as they traversed Middle Earth. He's basically saying it looked pretty, but there's no substance whatsoever to this in any way, shape, or form. And Screen Rant goes on to further explain in their actual headline, not what they put out there on Twitter, The Rings of Power Season 2 review. Amazon's grand plan crumbles as Sauron begins. Even Screen Rant, who is out there trying to promote and push and encourage you to watch this show, says Amazon's grand plan crumbles. And then honestly, probably one of my favorites, The Lord of the Rings from TheWrap.com. Access Media, Shills for the Spirit of the Age says, The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. Season 2 review. TV's most expensive series, cost over $1 billion, mind you, remains stunningly boring. It's pretty, but there's no substance whatsoever. It's like having a beautiful girl. She's fun for a night, but she's a complete and total airhead. She's an idiot or she's a psychopath. It's fun for one round, but there's literally no substance to it whatsoever. Prime Video's big budget prequel has yet to develop characters we care about or put them in situation that makes their fates moving. That's because we know why. Why did they choose to do this with J.R.R. Tolkien's great, incredible work where there's plenty of it to feed off and utilize? Because they came in, Amazon specifically, their head of studios, who's an absolute woke demigod, acolyte of the cult, completely and totally possessed by the spirit of the age, member, right, is all about diversity, inclusion, and equity. So they never approached the Amazon series trying to respect Tolkien, trying to respect the lore, trying to bring the gorgeous, amazing, complex, and dense words that he put on the page to life. No, they were not Peter Jackson, and they were never going to be. They had no desire to respect the feel or the spirit of anything Tolkien. No, they wanted to use the billions of Tolkien fans worldwide as their springboard for diversity. Because that's all we've heard in the marketing around this show. And that's how you know this is going to be trash. That's all we hear about. It's so diverse. Oh, I'm a black elf. I feel represented. Oh, my dwarf doesn't have a beard, so I feel represented. By the way, hashtag real dwarves have beards. That female, and even though she was the only bright spot in the first season, needs to have a beard. Real dwarves have beards. And by the way, what? You've got a problem with a bearded lady? What's wrong with that? She didn't want it. Is she some kind of transphobe? She didn't want to have a beard and accurately represent the dwarves? No. You never cared about accurate representation to anything Tolkien. You cared about trying to shove your agenda down the throats of billions of Tolkien fans, past generations and future. And guess what? For all your diversity, for all your inclusion, for all of your equity, it couldn't equal out to even good reviews from the top critics out there for your season 2, who they have got to watch apparently the entire thing. They're not going to have to suffer through all of it like us weekly, trying to review and roast this show and point out how abysmally bad it is once again to document the disastrous dumpster fire of all things Lord of the Rings, Amazon's Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power fanfic abomination. And that's exactly what we're doing. Because even the critics, who are all down for the diversity, the inclusion, and the equity, they love your black dwarf. They love your girl boss Galadriel, who's the bestest at everything. And they love your dark, hot Sauron that Galadriel just can't wait to have his cock down her throat. You want all of that. They gave you all of that. But you even have to admit that by them, you'll never admit that by them and concentrating all of the rest of that stuff is why their story fails. But we all know the truth. We know why this stuff fails. We know why even the people out there in the Hollywood circles, the critics, the people who go to all these cocktail parties and give all these showrunners and movie people pats on the back for all that diversity, all that inclusion. You really showed those white, straight people, didn't you? You really showed it to the chuds. Good job, buddy. But your story's still shit, man. Your story's still shit. Because it is. It's garbage. They have eliminated anybody that had any kind of respect for Tolkien because all they wanted to do was make this about diversity, inclusion, and equity. And we know what happens when you make things about diversity, inclusion, and equity. They go to die. Just like your ratings did. Just like your ratings will continue to do. And even the top critics out there, the people that you can't pay off and get fabulous little trips over to Europe to go check out their big fancy castle, those influencers, even they will be not enough to save your absolute abomination and disrespect to the great Roman Catholic Professor J.R.R. Tolkien's wonderful work, The Lord of the Rings. You chose diversity, inclusion, and equity over good storytelling and sticking to the lore. And guess what? When you do that, you don't make the fans happy. And apparently, you don't even make the Hollywood critics happy either. And if that doesn't equal out to not making the fans happy and going broke, it also definitely equals out to you get exactly what you deserve, Amazon. Because season 2 is going to be a worse abomination than the first. And I cannot wait to report on your ratings numbers because they are going to be even farther in the toilet than the last one. And guess what, Amazon? You get exactly what you deserve. Hashtag respect for Tolkien.